I'm Taylor Riggs in San Francisco and for Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, pump the brakes. London's transit authority refuses to renew Uber's operating license over concerns about passenger safety. Uber CEO calls the decision wrong. The company vows an appeal. Plus, that's the ticket. eBay is selling StubHub to European rival Viagogo for more than $4 billion in cash. We'll have details. And going global, Amazon joins forces with Chinese retail app in a play for Chinese consumers. Is it a sign that Black Friday is broadening its reach? But first, to our top story. Uber's future in the City of London is looking bleak. The city's transit authority has refused to grant the ride-hailing service a new license. The reason? Rider safety. Bloomberg's Nate Langston has the details.
The mood here in London is really that Uber is going to have to follow a similar procedure to what it did a couple of years ago. And as background, in September 2017, it was denied a license the first time and it immediately appealed. And as long as an appeal is ongoing, then the company is allowed to keep operating, taking rides and having drivers on its platform. Uber said today that it will appeal the decision. It doesn't have long to do that because the license that it currently has, which was only for 2 months anyway, expires at midnight London time tonight. But it said it will appeal, and then as long as that appeal carries on through the courts, then it can stay on the ground. The question will be whether the company can make the changes that it needs to make in its software to allow TfL to feel confident that it's worthy and that it's fit and proper, as they say, to hold a full license. That's going to be several months probably before we have any clear indication, and Uber says it's already fixed one of the main problems that TfL had with the app in the first place. But we're going to have to wait probably until perhaps the spring before we get any kind of answer from the courts. Nate Langston, Bloomberg News, London.
Now, Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi has responded to this, tweeting, "We understand we are held to a high bar, as we should be, but this TfL decision is just wrong. Over the last 2 years, we have fundamentally changed how we operate in London. We have come very far, and we will keep going for the millions of drivers and riders who rely on us." But London Mayor Sadiq Khan says much more needs to be done in regards to safety.
Look, I'm really keen for London to be a hotbed for innovation, for new technologies, for new businesses to come, but you've got to abide by the rules. And what's clear is Uber's policies and their practices means that passenger safety is being compromised.
For more, I want to bring in Bloomberg Technology's Eric Newcomer. Eric, Uber says they're a technology company. So walk me through how the technology of this app allowed all of those vulnerabilities about those safety concerns.
You know, the issue here is whether drivers in London were able to get on the platform even though they weren't sort of the right driver or properly licensed. And, you know, the City of London says we're talking about more than some 10,000 some rides, I think, with a driver who shouldn't be giving the ride. So that's a big concern for them. I think Uber has said it, you know, it corrected the mistake. But, you know, when you're already on the ropes in a city and under tight scrutiny, having these questions about whether the right drivers are giving rides is not a problem Uber wants to be having.
Yeah, Eric, you talk about them being on the ropes again, and this is not the first time they've been in this situation. In your story, you point out it was September of 2017 when they temporarily had their license revoked as well. What changes have they made over that time frame?
You know, the company has undergone a cultural shift under Dara Khosrowshahi. You know, a lot of the old executives have left. I mean, to Uber's benefit and to its detriment, I think, you know, it is sort of slowed down somewhat in coming up with new ideas and new exciting products. You think about like Uber Pool or Eats or sort of those sort of new ideas. But on the other hand, the company has really tried to crack down, work with regulators, and have a discussion. So this is exactly the sort of area where the company hopes under Dara to be winning. And so it's really unfortunate for the business, that they can't make that happen.
Are they striking a similar tone with regulators as they were a few years ago, trying to work with them, not be hostile, not be dogmatic, but trying to create more of a friendly working approach? Is that the approach they're taking this time, and is it working?
Yeah, I think dialogue, working with cities, countries, states, everything in between, but then when they disagree, coming out and saying it. I mean, you do see, in the California fight over independent contractor rules, they did sort of say, okay, we'll fight a referendum, we'll put money behind it. So there's been some of that, we're a company that can throw our weight around more than they might have right after Travis Kalanick left the job, and their reputation was really in tatters. But I think they're still trying to play the cooperative nice guy to the extent that they can.
Well, in talking about Uber's response to all of this, I want to bring in a soundbite that we have over at the head of the UK over in Uber. Take a listen.
In the UK, one thing we are intending to launch quite soon is driver face matching. So effectively a technology that has been in the US since 2016 that means that drivers can only log on to their account and start taking trips once we validate, either through automated means or through human contact, that the driver is who they say they are.
Eric, does this help appease any of the regulatory issues going on right now during the appeal process?
Uber's stuck in this situation where you can have privacy or you can have safety, but you might not be able to have both, right? I mean, there's this sense that Uber wants to look at videos, voice, listening to voices in a car, now looking at the faces of drivers. These are all areas where Uber says, okay, you're worried about whether an Uber is safe enough, we can sort of take away a little privacy and give you more safety. So I think on the policy side, that's going to be the big debate that's going to rage around Uber going forward, just because they're going to take hits both ways. But it is really a question of how much do people expect Uber to oversee, a given ride versus saying, okay, it's up, we're matching you with the driver, and what will happen is between you and the driver. Clearly, people think Uber needs to police those rides, and so that's going to mean trying to roll out some sort of surveillance to keep track of what's going on when you're in the car with that driver.
Bloomberg Technologies' Eric Newcomer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Elon Musk is at it again, and by again, we mean tweeting Tesla reservation counts. This time, it was for 200,000 deposits for Tesla's new Cybertruck. That's despite a now infamous launch last Thursday that saw the supposed shatterproof glass, well, it shattered. For more on these reservations, it is Bloomberg's Dana Holt who covers the EV maker. Can we believe the 200,000 reservation number, even though the deposit is $100 and that's refundable?
I believe it. I mean, I think that this truck does have appeal, particularly to younger people, to people in LA, to gamers. I mean, and a lot of people have said that at first they hated it, but over the weekend they came to love it, and it looks like nothing else on the road. So even though the vehicle is far from production, I believe that 200,000 people have put down reservations.
And Dana, it's been 3 days, but I cannot stop watching the video that we're showing, and it is shattering that glass. What was their reasoning that they've been coming out with in the last few days about why that glass shattered?
Yeah, so I mean, you're not alone. I think I've watched it like 20 times. So first, Elon tweeted out a video that shows Franz testing the glass before the big demonstration, and then he tweeted yesterday that when they hammered the car with a sledgehammer, that somehow hurt the glass. But that doesn't explain why the second window also shattered. So there's still a lot of theories floating around on the internet as to what exactly happened.
It's interesting because my very smart producers and I were talking about this, and we thought, well, wouldn't you want your window to be able to shatter? In the case of an emergency situation, you think you're underwater, you've driven into the ocean or something. I mean, wouldn't you want to be able to get out?
Well, right. I mean, I don't quite. Yeah, that is that is a legitimate question. I mean, in an emergency, how do first responders break the glass?
Yeah, very, very interesting. We'll have to continue to monitor that. I want to talk about Another statistic in your story, which seems to be also good news for the company, where you have the base price about $40,000, but of those orders, it looked like more were upgrades or the dual engine models. Walk me through the composition of what we know.
Yeah, so this is all going to change because this is just based on Elon's tweet, but he said that like 42% of reservations had ordered the highest end, which was roughly $70,000, and the other 42% had ordered the $50,000. But again, these are just $100 deposits. You can't really configure your car until it's closer to production, which is another 2 years away. But it shows that people are willing to pay, and that there's not as much appetite for the lower end version.
And we were speaking with Gene Munster over at Loop Ventures, and I can help illustrate this if you come and take a look at a chart here that I'm showing inside my terminal, where he said the pressure is sort of off Tesla right now. They have a really good leeway, good leg room to run here, given their free cash flow has turned positive. They're more profitable right now. So this really gives them some time to go back and look at that production target. Do you agree that right now they're in a fairly decent position to be looking at this Cybertruck and the production?
Yeah, I mean, I think the company's goal has always been to kind of disrupt every market segment, and trucks is a huge segment. The Ford F-150 is the number one selling vehicle in America, and in order to really, electrificate the segment, they need to take on trucks. But yeah, I mean, they've had a positive run. They had that surprise third quarter profit.
Wonderful. Bloomberg's Dan Hole, thank you for joining us. And shares of HP Enterprise are falling in after hours trading after last quarter's revenue missed estimates, and then they fell about 9% year over year. The good news for the company is the current quarter's adjusted EPS guidance came in at the high end of the range of analyst estimates. And coming up in 2007, eBay paid $310 million. Now the company is selling the ticket reseller for $4 billion. Details on the all-cash deal for StubHub next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on Sirius XM. This is Bloomberg. eBay is selling its ticketing business StubHub to Swiss ticket reseller Viagogo. The price, a little more than $4 billion in cash. StubHub is one of the most popular sites to buy and sell tickets to sports events and concerts. eBay bought the company back in 2007 for $310 million. To discuss, we're joined by Bloomberg Deals reporter Leanna Baker, and also with us is Jitendra Worrell of Bloomberg Intelligence. Leanna, let me just start with you. From Viagogo's perspective, what are they hoping to gain from StubHub?
Well, Viagogo isn't a household name here in the U.S. They're in 70 countries worldwide, and what it wants here is an entree into the U.S. market, which is one of the fastest growing ticket markets out there. And they really are paying up about $4 billion, but they've brought in some investors to help them. And it's a bit of a homecoming also. Eric Baker, the founder of Viagogo, was actually one of the founders of StubHub, but he left before it sold originally to eBay.
Well, and Leanna, the CEO, as you mentioned, Eric Baker, had really talked a lot about making this sort of a global company. He was really excited about reuniting these two and bringing it together and his global ambitions. Is that really the play here, as Viagogo gets a U.S. market and then StubHub can also have a global reach as well?
That's definitely the strategy, because Viagogo isn't really present in the market here, but it's a very fragmented industry. There's many competitors, some that were even trying to bid on this business, like Vivid Seats and other different upstarts, Game Time. The StubHub founders have really gone out and founded a lot of companies that are going after that market. So it's going to be competitive, and Viagogo coming in with StubHub has a good chance in terms of having a good brand with consumers, but eBay was under pressure to sell this, so clearly it wasn't fitting in, and it was looking for other avenues to grow its revenue.
Well, and Jitendra, you cover eBay for us, so I want to get your take. A lot of analysts came out today and said that this deal was going to be unlocking a lot of value for eBay. What's your analysis?
Yeah, so it actually does two things for eBay. One, it buys them time to sort of fix the core marketplace, which is going to take time. They have to come up with a sustainable strategy there, but at least this can help fuel profit growth. it also sort of like increases the impetus on the other asset sales scenarios like classifieds and things like that, other restructuring avenues. If you basically look at cost structure for eBay, there is more room for operating expenses to go down. So at least that's in their control. The fight with likes of Amazon and coming next year with Facebook also entering the e-commerce market is still, we don't have an answer yet. We're still waiting for a CEO and the strategy on that end, but at least this buys them time to drive that profit growth that they can.
And Jitendra, in your years of covering this company, why haven't they been able to keep up with Amazon? What has been the biggest headwind for them?
Well, the biggest headwind really has been the muscle memory that Amazon has developed among its consumers through Prime in many ways, and that has really helped them sort of drive that bus forward and increase loyalty and things like that. So eBay has missed out on that opportunity for a while now, and once you sort of lose share over there, it's harder to gain mind share more than market share. So mind share shifts and market share sort of shifts along with it. The opportunity in front of eBay now is to sort of focus on things in front of them like advertising, the payments, which can also drive higher margin revenue for them. So I think this restructuring mode that eBay is getting into is certainly buying them time. And if you look at the valuation for the company, it's sort of reflecting that top line slowdown, if you may. So we continue to see eBay more as a profit growth story than the revenue growth story in the near term. And longer term, it'll really depend on the strategy as to if they focus on key verticals or key regions, or really they bank on partnerships with the upcoming e-commerce players and sort of become the back end of the engine. So that is a wait and see, but at least for now, profit growth is a potential here.
Leanna, at $4 billion in cash, I was hearing about 25 times EBITDA. Are there any calls going on that this might have been an expensive purchase?
So eBay had been working with Goldman Sachs for many months on trying to find the highest bidder, and from what we understand, it was pretty competitive at the end. As I mentioned before, Vivid Seats was competing and other private equity firms. So different firms really wanted this asset. So that really drove the price above $4 billion, which was higher than what we initially expected. We thought it would sell for between $3 and $4 billion. Viagogo had to bring on other investors to help fund this because Viagogo is a private company and it's not well known, so they had to get funding from JP Morgan and others to make this happen.
Bloomberg's Leanna Baker and Jitendra Worrell of Bloomberg Intelligence, thank you both for joining us. And a CEO of a new online marketplace thinks his platform can battle rivals like Amazon. We'll hear how he plans to do that next. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology. Be sure to follow our global breaking news network at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. Let's get a look at the top tech calls. Started with Loop Capital Markets. They upgraded Lyft to a buy with a $62 price target. The analyst said the company has strong execution and now benefits from a better competitive environment. The U.S. rides business is showing competitive rationality, allowing Lyft's share gain and margin expansion to continue. That's what the analyst wrote. And Snap was upgraded to a buy from hold also at Loop Capital Markets, which wrote that the social media company had turned a corner with the successful deployment of its Android-based app, and that is contributing to an improved view for the company's revenue. The analyst said Snap is seeing the highest ad revenue growth of major internet platforms. And Netflix was downgraded to an underperform by analysts at Wells Fargo, saying it offered growth at an unreasonable price. As competition's increasing, Wells Fargo analysts said it will keep content and marketing spend elevated, and that could weigh on growth in average revenue per user. Now, online retail startup Verishop is competing in a highly crowded market of e-commerce, but it aims to take on rivals like Amazon and Macy's by solving problems they cannot. Verishop co-founder and CEO Imran Khan spoke to Bloomberg's Scarlett Fu and Romain Bostic about how the platform stands out.
e-commerce is only 10% of overall retail sales. And whenever a market gets 10% penetration, we usually see accelerated disruption. We saw that with Netflix. When Netflix got 10% penetration, Blockbuster went out of business. We saw that with digital advertising. When digital advertising reached 10%, we saw accelerated growth. So I think e-commerce will be 30 to 40% of the market, and not one company can solve all problems, and there will be new players. The second big thing is, I think the consumers' loyalty to brands have been decreasing. Yeah. I think the millennials are now willing to try a lot of new brands, as opposed to their parent generation who are a fan of few brands. So we're seeing a lot of new brands popping up, and there's not a lot of good places to discover those brands. So we created this platform to consumers to discover a lot of cool new brands. Sure. And then the third thing is that we're also seeing that a lot of the large brands who are heavily dependent on department stores, they need a new avenue of distribution, and we are becoming a distribution platform for them as well.
And one thing that gets consumers' attention is the free one-day shipping as well. Is that going to be a permanent feature? Because we know from seeing other companies that this can get awfully expensive awfully quickly. Amazon, for instance, sees its costs expanding and rising on this. Yeah, we believe that consumer shops for 4 reasons: price, quality, convenience, and selection. And one of the things that we promised, a brand is a promise, and Verishop promise is that convenience is one of the areas that we're going to focus on. So we're going to continue to invest more and more. How can we deliver the product faster, better, and more efficiently? And then the second promise is discovery. So we're bringing in all these global international brands, a lot of these new discovery brands that you would not find anywhere else.
But what's the advantage here? I mean, you're bringing in all of these brands, but then I'm sure there are some department store executives over at Macy's or Bloomingdale's that would say, well, we already do that. What's the attraction for me to go to Verishop instead of going to Macy's.com or to Walmart.com?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to go back to the Verishop promise.
And this is just about a broadening market? Or?
I think I'm going to go back to Verishop promise. Right. Number one is in terms of discovery. If you look at our top 10 brands in men, women, home, and beauty, many of those brands, probably more than half of them, you will not find it any other department stores or other stores. So they're really discovery brands.
That was Verishop co-founder and CEO Imran Khan. And coming up, taking Black Friday global, Amazon's using the shopping day to get back into China, but it's not going it alone. We'll have the details on its new partnership next. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology Global Link, where we now join Bloomberg Daybreak Australia to bring you the latest in global tech news. I'm Taylor Riggs in San Francisco with Sherry Ann in New York and Paul Allen in Sydney. Let's take a look at those top global tech stories of the day. Paul?
All right, thanks, Taylor. SoftBank has launched its $3 billion tender for troubled WeWork. According to sources, the offer is set to expire on April the 1st. Now, this comes as WeWork announced last week that it was laying off 2,400 employees around the world, and that is about 20% of its workforce. Tencent is increasing its bet on Argentina's mobile payments app Uala. The Chinese internet giant is leading a $150 million Series C funding. Uala plans to use the funds to triple its team to over 500 employees by the end of next year. It'll also expand its loans products and develop new business units. SoftBank is also involved in the funding round. And Britain's top phone company is looking to reduce its reliance on Huawei. BT Group is looking for a new broadband supplier as it prepares to connect millions of homes to optic fibre. Huawei, which has been cited as a security risk by the US government, currently has a 60% market share in UK fibre components. So those are the top global tech stories that we're watching. Sherry.
Paul, thank you. Let's talk about Amazon. Is the company trying to take Black Friday global? Well, it might be thanks to its new deal with China's number 3 online retailer. Amazon just opened a storefront on Pinduoduo, and starting on Thanksgiving, will launch a 3-day sales campaign to offer Chinese consumers a range of overseas products. The partnership will continue until the end of the year. This comes after Amazon shut down its Chinese marketplace in July. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Spencer Soper in Seattle. Spencer, so who will benefit more, Amazon or Pinduoduo here?
That's hard to say. I mean, certainly Amazon gets exposure to a huge market and potentially make a lot of big sales for products that the key will be to distinguish themselves with products that either people can't get on these other platforms, JD.com and Alibaba, or where they're simply more confident getting those items from an Amazon storefront. So that's where the a lot of this can even address consumer confidence on the authenticity of those Western brands, because that's something Alibaba has tried as well, where it's even encouraged department stores like Macy's that are known more for Western products to open stores on Tmall to try to validate the authenticity of those products to Chinese shoppers, because they're very worried about fakes.
Spencer, you wrote in your story how Amazon had to exit China back in July because it wasn't making enough progress. How dependent on China and the future Chinese consumer is Amazon?
Well, it's a huge market, and if you think about right now, you know, there's definitely thoughts about Amazon hitting concentration or saturation point in the U.S. its primary market. It continues growing by going broader, you know, rather than deeper into individual categories it's already in. It keeps adding more and more categories. And so what are the limits of that? It's investing heavily in India, but it certainly would like to get, it doesn't have to win everything or be dominant in China to still get a lot of business from China, because such a tremendous market. And we should say that Alibaba and Amazon have kind of been swirling around each other for some time. You mentioned Amazon pulling out of China. Alibaba very briefly a couple years ago had some sort of effort to open a store, an online store in the US. Can't remember the name of it now. I think it was like 11 Main or 13 Main or something like that, that they opened and just as quickly shut down.
So, Spencer, could this partnership help Amazon again retake that #1 position in the world's biggest shopping event? Remember, I think they lost out to Alibaba's Singles Day recently, right?
Yeah, Singles Day is the biggest individual shopping event, and so could moving into or generating more interest in China about Black Friday help Black Friday retake it. I suppose it could, but I don't think that's the end goal. It's simply a new market, a day of momentum, and an area, you know, kind of a regrouping of not entirely giving up on China. How can we still get into China? And even if we're not dominating, how can we pick up some scraps? There's still some sizable scraps when you think about the size of China.
You know, Spencer, you talk about how the PDD and Amazon partnerships extending now through the end of December. Any hints that this could be a longer-term partnership?
Yeah, certainly. You know, Amazon, if it's going well, Amazon's certainly not going to end it due to some arbitrary deadline. It would seek to deepen that relationship and continue the success. So absolutely, and who knows if, you know, acquisitions are certainly, you know, potential things that Amazon has, you know, kind of bought its way into other geographic markets. If we think of the Middle East and Souk.com, so you know, absolutely, Amazon's looking for ways to enter there and would look to build on any success if they have it.
So, Spencer, are there any specific measures that the two companies will take ahead of this big event? Is there any restructuring that should take place in order to align those two businesses together to prepare for this?
I'm sorry, you mean between Amazon and
Pinduoduo?
Yeah, I don't know about restructuring over, you know, a single day or anything like that. You know, that would be further down the line, I think, if there were further, you know, deepening of the relationship.
Thank you to Bloomberg's Spencer Soper. And plenty of global stories to come. That's next. This is Bloomberg. Prezi, the company known for its zoomable presentation platform, recently launched a video version of it. Prezi Video is a video recording software that lets users add graphics in real time while having their face on the screen next to the visual content during a presentation. Joining us to discuss how it could change video conferences in this week's Work Shifting segment, it is Prezi co-founder and CEO Peter Arvai. Peter, great to have you. Talk to me more about this video and how you plan to help increase internal communications with it for corporations.
Thanks for having me on the show, Taylor. Yes, we just launched this product and we designed it for people to have something to say and made it possible for people to literally hold their ideas in their hands. Now, this is of course something that weathermen have been able to do for ages, but they've had an entire studio to do that. And so what we've done is made it possible for anyone with their laptop and the camera on that to be able to do this. And it's also possible to do not just in live situations in a meeting like the one we're doing now, it's also possible to do in recorded situations, so that unless you don't have to learn a complicated editing tool, you can actually create these presentations in a matter of minutes.
You know, Peter, this is a technology show, and I have guests on this program constantly talking about the remote workforce, really, that is going to be the future of all of these businesses. Is this really to help the future that is a remote workforce?
Definitely. I mean, Prezi is a company itself with a cross-continental setup, so I've flown 1 million miles myself in order to have engaging meetings. But it's hard to do engaging meetings, and particularly in a remote setup. And what we found with Prezi Video is that, yes, in fact, when you're able to hold these ideas in your hand, you create that personal and human connection that really engages more people. When we do webinars, for example, which we just started doing as we launched the product, we see that people engage much more and stay attuned to the message much longer.
Well, and along those lines, you had some fascinating statistics saying that on average, people lose attention after 18 minutes. U.S. employees seem to think that a video conference should be no longer than 24 minutes. What do you plan to do with those statistics?
Well, we think we're going to revolutionize the world of video. In fact, this has been our origin as a company. People choose Prezi today because it helps them to engage audiences, whether it is a remote situation like we're in right now, or in a live meeting. We have over now 100 million people who have said we're going to move away from slides and into the Prezi world. And they, in turn, have created actually the world's largest library of presentations that are available on our site now, over 400 million of them. Now, we know not just that this is important to a lot of people, we also know just how much more it is important. In fact, thanks to Harvard researchers, we can see that people who make this change, they are 25% more effective than those who only use slides.
Peter, another interesting note that struck me was that a person's face can go next to the video presentation, which sort of lends credibility because you want to account for that data because, frankly, your face is next to it. Are people comfortable with that?
What we see just in these 2 weeks that we've been around is definitely so. Of course, with younger generations, people are natural, already weathermen from the get-go. And for some older people, it might take a little bit of time getting used to it. But we definitely see a lot of excitement around it.
What can we expect from you next?
I think we will continue revolutionizing the workplaces, but also the schools. Think about it like this. You know, if you have your schedule in front of you and you see that a bunch of it is busy with meetings, how do you think most people react?
Who are you targeting in terms of a business perspective?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so what we see that most people, when they see these meetings, they react with dread. Oh no, we have a bunch of boring meetings. But it can even be worse than that. It can be a matter of life and death. In fact, there's only one tool in the world that has death associated with it. It's death by PowerPoint. And that's the engagement we like to change. We'd like to bring it to salespeople, marketing people, HR. These are the ones first to adopt Prezi in a company. But also in education, we have a lot of people meeting Prezi for the first time in schools. So it's teachers who care about engaging their students. They are among the first one to adopt Prezi as well.
Prezi's Peter Arvai, thank you for joining us. And still ahead, after the recent debut of Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, Netflix still appears to dominate that crowded streaming market. That's next. This is Bloomberg. Google told staff on Monday that it fired 4 employees over what it called, quote, clear and repeated violations of data security policies. The information was conveyed in an email titled Securing Our Data. It comes at a time when tensions have risen between the company's management and staff. Some workers say the company is wrongly trying to interfere with their ability to protest and unionize. Now, Netflix's internal data suggests that the streaming giant has yet to be hurt by the launch of rival services from Disney and Apple. According to sources, the number of user cancellations is also said to have not accelerated around the debut of Disney Plus and Apple TV. For more on this discussion, we are joined by Bloomberg's Lucas Shaw, and today he's coming from New York. Lucas, I just wonder, what do we know sort of about the early numbers that we're getting from Netflix at this point?
All the numbers at a Netflix or about Netflix thus far suggest status quo. It's almost as if there is not competition. The external measurements, things that data analysts have used, like Google search trends and app downloads, suggest that the numbers for Netflix are similar to what they were a year ago, or perhaps even better. And then my reporting suggests that the internal churn number, which is the number of people canceling, is also unchanged. Of course, this is a very small sample size. Most of the people who signed up for Disney Plus or Apple Plus are on some kind of free trial, and the real effect of new competition probably won't be felt for 6 months, 12 months. But that being said, Wall Street analysts are paying very close attention to this, and Netflix's next earnings report, which is going to be kind of early next year, they'll be scrutinizing whether they beat or miss. They'll probably blame it on Disney or Apple, even if those are not the root causes.
Lucas, why aren't we seeing more churn at Netflix?
I mean, part of it is that if you believe Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, his theory is people will add on these other services to Netflix, that as consumers move from linear television, cable and satellite to streaming, they'll sign up for multiple services. Netflix has really sold itself as the base product, the one thing that everybody needs to have. Then you'll have families or people who are big fans of comic books or Star Wars who sign up for Disney Plus. You may have people who have Apple devices who pay for Apple. HBO Max obviously appeals to that core HBO customer, and there's going to be overlap between all of these. That's one of the reasons. The other is sort of what I was talking about earlier with it being so new. I just don't think it's likely that you're going to see somebody decide on day one, oh, I'm signing up for Disney Plus, and by the way, I'm going to cancel Netflix right away. You know, maybe they try Disney Plus for a couple of months, they like it so much, they feel like it satisfies their need, and then they cancel Netflix. But day one or week one feels a little soon.
Lucas, I was reading a few analyst reports today, and someone had mentioned that Netflix is missing out on $1 billion in revenue because they don't have an ad-supported model. They clearly are subscription-based. Do you hear or think about Netflix doing a different tiered subscription service where one is more ad revenue-based?
No. This gets talked about all the time. It does make some sense from a revenue perspective. It would bring in a lot more. It would allow them to monetize their giant customer base in a different way. But again, CEO Reed Hastings is adamant that Netflix's core proposition to its users is that it is ad-free streaming. And just as a CEO, he's somebody who tends to like being very focused. He thinks that if you execute on one thing very well, keep it simple for your employees and keep it simple for the customer, you're more likely to do well. I could see Netflix trying to maybe broaden its offering into other areas. You know, there's also talk about maybe music, maybe gaming, something like that. I have a hard time seeing them go to advertising unless they are really desperate and they need an answer. If you see growth slow for Netflix, then the company's leadership will have to explore alternatives. But right now, even though they're going to be down a little bit this year relative to last year, they're still going to add something like 26 million customers. There's no need for them to completely change their strategy yet.
Lucas, we talk about Netflix, we talk about Apple TV Plus and Disney Plus. On Friday, I spoke with Craig Moffett, analyst over at MoffettNathanson, who covers AT&T. As we know, they own HBO. How does HBO's streaming service fit into the broader streaming wars, for lack of a better word?
It's the most interesting one in some respects. It is the kind of the most direct competitor to Netflix, just in terms of the breadth of offering. You know, Disney competes with Netflix if you put together Disney Plus and Hulu. But HBO Max, you know, they are Netflix's competition at the, HBO's already Netflix's competition at the Emmys every year in terms of kind of premium dramas, premium comedies. HBO has historically been the home of lots of stand-up comedy, which is a market that Netflix has since cornered. If you look at the volume of new programs that HBO Max is going to make just for the streaming service, you know, they're just going to be pumping out such a wide breadth, from kids all the way to kind of adult dramas that are really inappropriate for children, that it's the most direct competition. It's the most expensive also. It'll be $15 a month, which is the same price as HBO, more than Netflix, more than Disney Plus and Hulu combined. And so I'm just very interested in what the big market is for HBO Max beyond that existing core HBO customer.
Bloomberg's Lucas Shaw on the streaming wars. Thank you for joining us. And speaking of all these new media companies, there is a new integrated platform called Engine Media. It's the result of a merger between WinView Games, esports company Torque, and distribution network Frankly Media. The new venture claims over 2 million registered esports players and a reach of 100 million monthly active users. In New York, to tell us more is the executive chairman of WinView Games, Tom Rogers. Before that, he was the CEO of TiVo, as well as the president of what used to be NBC Cable, and he will be the executive chairman of the new endeavor. Tom, great to have you. What does this new media company look like in your eyes, given it's a merger of 3 different companies coming all together?
Well, it is the antidote for what Lucas was just talking about. As the entertainment world moves to streaming, you have this big question. It means that there's going to be more and more cord cutting, more and more decline of traditional linear television, and what people expect will be left of live TV as entertainment television goes elsewhere is news and sports. And that raises the major issue: how do news and sports drive new sources of revenue as the subscription fees that came from cable and satellite are no longer there to support them? So Engine stands for E for esports, N for news, G for gaming, sports gaming in particular, in an interactive form where we think much of the revenue that's going to be needed to support those forms of programming going forward are mobile platform expertise that Engine brings to the table.
And really, you talk about this being a live, immersive experience. Give me a real-life example.
You're watching a basketball game. You have the WinView app in front of you, and you are predicting what's going to happen in the game as it goes. You're playing against other people socially, either anonymously or friends and family. It's a game of skill. You've paid to enter. At the end of a quarter, you've maybe won some money as you play against 20 other people in your room. One way to have an immersive experience off of sports television that exists today, but extends it socially. Another example would be esports tournaments. Might be around Fortnite, might be around NBA 2000. Torque, one of the companies, a real leader in esports, has a competitive platform, and they have tournament prizing for all of the kind of contests that are already available on Twitch. Well, you could extend that Twitch broadcast to the WinView gaming platform to allow viewers to play along in real time, predicting what's going to happen in an esports game, just like you would in traditional sports. So a number of ways to drive revenues. Frankly, has a stable of stations that are generating news revenue from mobile television, mobile platforms that Frankly has in place. And obviously being able to promote contests is something radio and TV has done for a long time. Another way for them to participate.
You know, Tom, you have been through decades of change within the media landscape. What is your view on the future of media and these streaming wars?
Well, I think it's no surprise that Netflix is not suffering any churn, and I think Netflix will continue to thrive. I think the big thing is that this is a global game. Esports is global. Esports already has 450 million people around the world participating. Netflix's great strength is its ability to reach so many people internationally, and with that, the ability to amortize its programming expense and its massive programming budget, which dwarfs any of the other players in terms of their programming. And so this is no longer a national game. This is a big global game, and support for sources, whether it's sports and news or entertainment, is increasingly going to be about global capability.
Tom Rogers of WinView Games, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
now,
very
I just
much.
want to bring you some news that we are getting here. Trump's ex-counsel McGahn has been ordered by a judge to testify to Congress. A ruling could help compel other Trump officials as well to testify. And we do know that a House panel is examining whether Trump has obstructed the Mueller probe. So again, the ex-counsel McGahn has been ordered by a judge to testify for Congress. We'll bring you more as we get it. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.